Welcome into The Rundown, a daily podcast where we at CBN News give you inside information on the stories we are covering. Today is Thursday, August 6th. I'm Dan Andros, filling in for Caitlin Burke. Well, the election's closing in, though you'd hardly know it because one of the candidates hasn't really been in the public eye much at all because of coronavirus and partially because of strategy as well. But the usually measured Mike Pence made some headlines during an exclusive and wide-ranging interview with CBN senior political analyst David Brody. The gloves came off, and Chief Justice John Roberts found himself directly in the crosshairs. And David Brody joins me now to discuss what was really a very compelling interview. So, David, thanks for being here.
You bet, Dan. Anytime.
Yeah, let's start with the big headline that really got a lot of attention, and rightfully so, because it was kind of shocking to watch it, to be honest with you, because Pence did not hold back his thoughts on Chief Justice Roberts. You know, for everyone who missed it, David, recap a little bit about what he said. But I want to hear what your reaction was because, you know, Pence is usually measured. And so this was definitely a departure for him.
Right. Well, Mike Pence actually came out and by name called out Chief Justice Roberts, saying Chief Justice Roberts has been a disappointment to conservatives. And the minute he said that, I said, hold on. Who am I talking to again? This is Mike Pence. Mike, this is not what Mike Pence typically does. Very un-Pence-like, if you will. He pretty much plays it by the vest. So there were a couple thoughts running through my mind. The first thought was, wow, he just made news. Two was, wow, he just made news, all bold, 18 font, we're on a powder keg. And then I thought to myself, why did he do it? And I thought about this afterwards. And of course, you know, we can put him on the Dr. Phil couch or we can do political analysis all day. But I do think there was a bit of a strategy behind it. And quite frankly, I'm not suggesting that he was plotting this or he was ready to unload on Roberts. But if you think about it, in the context of the conversation that we were having, which is about the life issue, about judges, about marriage, about evangelicals, about 2020 writ large, what he was in essence doing was saying, look, I'm simpatico with what the base is feeling. And what the base is feeling right now is that John Roberts has been an unmitigated disaster. And I think from that standpoint, if you're in the Pence camp, and I haven't talked to him about it, but if you're in the Pence camp, you've got to be pretty happy with the headline, quite frankly, with an election coming in November. Look, he didn't do this in 2017 or 18. He did it 3 months before the election. And I think that is a significant point here, which is the timing of all of this, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that was kind of my thought, too, was what does it say? Because you know that a statement like that, especially from someone as measured as Pence, was certainly intentional. Like this was not just him, having a, kind of a frustrated moment and just saying, yeah, we've been, he's been disappointing. Like clearly this was something that they had considered. And at least according to me, that's just the way I've seen Pence being very measured. So my assumption is that this is something that he wanted out there. So what do you think, David? You've analyzed these campaigns for many years. So what do you think this says about the state of the campaign that they want to go, that's a point that they want to dig into?
Well, I think that it means that they're very concerned.
Yeah.
That I think that they understand that judges, especially on the life issue, especially just kind of once it began back to the macro of judges and just kind of where is this country going in terms of future direction, they know, and I'm not trying to make this out to be so political, but look, they know it's the evangelical bread and butter, if you will. They know that if they can talk courts, if they can talk judges, if they can get that in front of the faithful, if you will, that white evangelical base that we've heard so much about in the last 3 to 4 years, that 81% that turned out in 2020, that they have a pretty good shot at winning again. But once again, a pretty good shot, and we can get into the numbers, but they're going to have to do that north of 81%, which is what they did in 2016. So I think that's kind of the calculus a little bit.
You look at the poll numbers, and I know Trump has been down about double digits pretty consistently. Now it's not impossible, but I feel like that silent majority and that concern that you just expressed that might be what caused Pence to go in that direction. Those numbers might be some of what's fueling that. Are you seeing the same thing, or am I off base there?
Well, I guess we're gonna find out. We're all gonna find out together, and quite frankly, we may not find out on the morning of November 3rd.
Oh, let's pray. Let's pray that's not the case, Dave. We don't want to.
Dan, if I hear the words "hanging Chad," we're in big trouble. But
Yes.
look, let's take the polls a little bit with a grain of salt. And here's what I mean. If you look, and you know this, Dan, but if you look within the states, this is really important. The methodology, the pollsters that I'm talking to, and I'm talking to a wide variety of pollsters, they're all telling me that the methodology of the state polling, that's the key, the battleground state polling, really hasn't changed much. And that's not good news. In other words, typically what they're doing is they're overweighting college-educated voters in these polls. So if the Trump voter, who is typically a little bit more obviously non-college educated, if they show up like they did in 2016, well, hello. I mean, you could have another shocking, if you will, win by Donald Trump in 2020. Right. So we'll see. Once again, that's what they're telling me. You know, whether you buy it or not, I don't know. I can tell you this. I think that there are two types of evangelicals out there. There are the evangelicals that held their nose for President Trump in 2016 and voted for him and then said, wow, he's actually doing what he said he was going to do, and I'm going to now really vote for him and maybe bring a friend. And then there's the others who held their nose and voted for him and don't like Twitter and don't like what he's saying and all of that and the rhetoric and have decided to jump ship. So I think the negligible difference, or I shouldn't say negligible, but the statistical difference between the two will be interesting to watch in 2020.
Yeah, absolutely. And you watch what's going on in the country, and this is an interesting just part of the, political, the political ramifications of it are interesting to me as well, is the protests that are going on. You see the radical left, you see the crazy calls of abolish the police and these, very, very far leftist ideas, and just images of cities burning and, flags burning, even Bibles burning. Is another video that we saw recently in Portland. And so all of this is going on right now. And the left, in a lot of cases, is not denouncing it and, kind of giving it, tacit approval. Almost every person I've talked to, whatever their political stripes are frustrated by that. They're not fans of that. They don't like it. And so while it may play well on Twitter, on leftist Twitter, I don't know if that's the average person that might be on the fence. It's going to be interesting to see where they go, because, the eye test, at least for me in my local circles, seems to be that they're not going to be thrilled with voting for someone that is perceived to be bringing that in. So I don't know if that silent majority is there or not, but it sure seems like it could be.
Well, you make a good point, Dan. And I was with the vice president, not just for the interview yesterday, but we traveled, obviously to Florida with him on Air Force Two, and we spent the whole day with him. And we were at a couple of his rallies. And of course, they're not the huge rallies like they used to be because of coronavirus. But the rally that we were at, where there were a couple hundred people, when he mentioned there is no way we're going to defund the police, it was the loudest applause that he got in the entire speech. And so that kind of gives you a sense of the frustration that's built into the base. Look, I think, and a lot of people have asked me, is coronavirus the number one issue here in the 2020 election as it relates to Donald Trump? And clearly people are going to cast their vote with that in mind. I don't think there's any question, but I don't think it's the biggest issue. I think, look, in politics, Dan, as you know, people vote with their heart, not with their brain, typically. It's typically an emotional, it's like, which candidate do you want to have the beer with? It's that. And in this case, I think that as Joe Biden goes around and says he wants to restore the soul of the nation, I think where the president is coming from is he wants to preserve and protect the soul of the nation. And what I mean by that is I'm not talking about Confederate statues. I'm talking about the underpinnings of freedom and democracy and Judeo-Christian principles. And so I think that's where the divide is. And this is what Mike Pence was preaching, if you will, I guess pun intended, in Florida all day yesterday, when he talked about not just Joe Biden, but he talked about, this is his line, Joe Biden and the Democrat Party have been hijacked by the radical left. It was never Joe Biden was hijacked by the radical left. It's Joe Biden and the Democrat Party. And I think that's what they're trying to do, kind of explain all of that in those terms. Yeah,
that's interesting. And I was going to point out to you that I noticed in your interview, he used that line, he repeated it when he was kind of searching for an answer to that question, which again, means to me that is something they really want to focus on. Obviously, that's a point they have ready to go, that overtaken by the radical left. And so I think that's something they think that they can dig in on. You asked him about the mail-in ballots. I thought his answer was interesting, saying that they were going to lean into the courts on that. If you could real quick just say, what is the difference between a mail-in ballot and an absentee ballot? He sort of explained it, but I've had all kinds of people asking me like, well, what is the difference? And so, I'd like to have a good answer for that, because why not just do absentee ballots?
Right. So there's a couple different things, but let's just kind of how do we say it? Make it pretty basic. Look, as Mike Pence was saying, and he's right here. With an absentee ballot, there has to be, or at least in pie in the sky, this is typically how it was. You have to have a reason that you need the absentee ballot. You know, whether or not you're caring for a loved one, or maybe you're sick yourself.
It's going to be overseas or something.
Yeah. Right. It's kind of like, going to school. You have to have a doctor's note. You have to have the doctor sign it. I mean, it's kind of a process. And so therefore, within that, there is integrity. When it comes to mail-in balloting, now you have two stages of it, right? You have mail-in balloting in certain states, Colorado, Washington, and others, where they believe, and these are Democrat governors speaking, but they believe they have, quote, perfected or close to perfected the system. Now, that's the key, the system. So what is the system for mail-in balloting? If the issue that the Trump campaign has is that if you are going to basically randomly mail applications for mail-in ballots to millions of people across the country in a plethora of states, I guess, in other words, all 50 states, now you're looking at universal mail-in balloting. You're looking at this huge, massive mail-in balloting. So the issue there is, how in the world are you going to have integrity if you're already seeing fraud in some of the mail-in balloting that we've seen in the country? Can you imagine what it's going to be like if it's on a much larger scale? So think of mail-in balloting as kind of like a larger scale absentee balloting, but throw out the integrity because here's the key. The system is not in place to protect the integrity as much as absentee balloting systems are right now.
All right, very good answer on that. And finally, one last thing is he kind of challenged Joe Biden in your interview there to hey, the answer to, the questions here, you asked him about Biden's cognitive function. He kind of deflected on that, but he did say, look, America's owed a debate. So what do you think is going to happen with these debates? Because Biden's strategy, as we talked about last time, is sort of been to just lay low and not really say much at all. So is he going to come out to these debates? Are we going to see them?
My hunch is we're going to see debates. I mean, how do you not see debates? I mean, at that point, you have to wonder, wait a minute, as Jim Acosta might say, is the fix in? Is the fix in at this point? Because, he's in his basement. He's not coming out. He's like, what's that, Groundhog Day? Did he see a shadow? And then we're not going to have debates as well. I mean, really, is the fix in? You have to ask that question. And where is the media? If Joe Biden, I got to be honest with you, Dan, the debates are supposed to happen in September. Where is the media drumbeat in August about why in the world Joe Biden and Democrats would even entertain something like this? Look, the bottom line is I think there are going to be debates. I think this could be the huge changing turning point, if you will, for the Trump campaign. And I thought what Pence told me, which is that, and the words he used, he says, Biden has to square up and basically go mano a mano. He didn't say mano a mano, but mano a mano with Biden on stage, I thought was interesting. And what I also thought was interesting, he's used a very interesting word. He said the antidote is what he called it. Yeah. The antidote for, and I'm paraphrasing, but basically what Pence was saying was the antidote to prove to everyone that you don't have a problem with your cognitive function is get on a debate stage. Well, if you look up the word antidote, we know what the word antidote, right? It's a medicine for wait for it, a poison, as in, Joe Biden, if Joe Biden is poisoned, if you will, from a cognitive standpoint, well, the antidote is to put Donald Trump in his place on the debate stage. But let's be honest, it's beyond a gaffe machine at this point. I mean, it's kind of hard to watch. And I actually feel sad for Joe Biden. And that kind of gets me into the whole why in the world, why is his family and the campaign putting him up like that? But they have no choice at this point. But it's rough to watch, Dan. It really is.
It is, but your interview wasn't rough to watch. It was a really great interview. A good job, as always, getting in there and mixing it up. And thanks for spending a few minutes with us here, breaking it down. And for all you out here listening who haven't seen it, just go to cbn.com, go to faithwire.com. You can go to the CBN News YouTube channel. We've got the interview and clips of it and the full interview for you to check out. So, David, thanks again.
And always a pleasure. Thanks.
CBN News provides a faith-based perspective on the most important stories of the day. But it takes time, hard work, and resources. Will you help us continue to be a voice for truth in the media? Visit cbnnews.com/give now. And thanks for listening.
And now for some of the other stories we're covering at this hour. Good news for fans of Chip and Jo's Fixer Upper. It's back. Chip and Joanna Gaines, they left HGTV and for the past couple years have been developing Magnolia TV. They made a big announcement regarding their hit program, Fixer Upper. We will be filming another season of Fixer Upper to air on Magnolia Network when it launches next year, Chip wrote in a statement. The Gaines, both devout Christians, say they felt like a chapter closed after filming the season finale, but there was still work to be done. We knew we weren't done dreaming about ways to make old things new again, Chip said. In a lot of ways, the show's going to pick right up where it left off. These years in between have taught us a lot about ourselves and how we operate best. So we're likely to do a few things a little differently this time around. Magnolia Network is scheduled to launch sometime next year. Well, China is demanding that churches preach about the communist government if they want to reopen. Churches have been denied reopening across China, mostly because they failed to adhere to a 42-item list of prerequisites that churches must follow in order to reopen again. The list includes orders to, quote, intensify patriotic education and, quote, study China's religious policies, end quote. Churches are also compelled to promote the so-called, quote, 4 requirements campaign, which involves promoting the, quote, core socialist values, end quote, of China, and promoting China's, quote, excellent traditional culture. One pastor admitted he had to preach as the state required because if he hadn't, the church would not have reopened, he said. Another person said the government told us that churches must preach about national affairs if they want to reopen. With President Xi's speeches as the main content, it's better for churches not to reopen, they said. Well, that's all the time we have for today. If you're enjoying this podcast, you know what to do. Go ahead and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. We'll be back again tomorrow with more stories and behind-the-scenes insight into how we are covering. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day, and God bless.